Welcome to the Arabesque Scissors YouTube channel. I'm Ali Phillips, and in part 2 of this video I'll be showing you how to take those shapes that we prepared in part 1 and how to applique them onto the background fabric so that we can deal with those internal points, achieve nice pointy points, and how to get beautifully invisible stitches. Now, if you love sewing instructional videos like this, please consider giving this video a like and hitting that subscribe button. So I'm selecting the red thread for this. So if you'd like to see the technique that I'm doing here, you can head to the video that I've got linked there. So I'm just threading a loop through, looping that over the eye of the needle and pulling a slip knot down. And I'm just going to tie a quilter's knot over all of that. And I'm going to start with my centre square here, and I'm just going to put just a little bit of glue on the back of that, and I'm just going to eyeball that into the centre of that. So you can see by lining up each of those points with the diagonals here that you've got your square nice and straight. Then we're going to start stitching. So pinch your fabric top and bottom from underneath, take your needle and come up from underneath, and I'm going to come out exactly right on that corner of the square there and pull out a stitch. I'm actually going to do a double stitch here because I'm just starting off. So then I'm going to come out again where I came out the first time, as close as I can to that corner. Pull that nice and tight, then put my needle back down into the background fabric right next to where I came out. But then I'm going to slide my needle along underneath the fabric and come out about 1/4 of an inch or so, right out on the very edge of that red square, and pull that tight, and then just continue doing that again. So you're going to put your needle right back down into your background fabric right next to where that thread is coming out, and come out about 1/4 of an inch along the very edge of that red thread and pull up a stitch. So just continue that, coming out 1/4 of an inch along. So now I'm approaching the corner. I'm going to come out exactly right on that corner. Got quite a few layers to go through there. I'm going to go down directly into that corner. And then I like to come out again right on the corner and do a double stitch. So I'm going to turn my work. I'm going to go back down into the background fabric right next to that corner and continue the process of stitching along the very edge. Now do a double stitch into the corner, so coming out directly on that corner again, back down into the background and right out on the very edge of the square. Now if you find when you get to your corner that any of your edges are sticking out, like these are just a little bit on here, so I'm just going to get my needle point and just tuck that under with the point of my needle and just make sure that that's all hidden. All those raw edges are nicely hidden under there. And the same for these ones here. And if you're finding it a little bit hard to use your needle to push them under, sometimes I find the point of my scissors is actually an even better option. So I'm nearly back to where I started. Just going into that background fabric, coming out exactly along that very edge of the solid fabric. And I'm just going to stop just a bit before that corner. I'm going to go back down right all the way into the background fabric, just flip it over, and then I'm going to tie off with a knot here. So just pulling that knot close to up against the back of that fabric, do a triple knot like so, and then you can trim off, and that is your first shape appliqued. So now I'm going to switch out my red thread and put some pink in. Okay, so the next part that I like to do for this design is to take one of the lotus flowers. I'm going to line that up directly on the point of the square here. So these side points are actually going to extend just a little bit. That's okay. We're just going to swipe a bit of glue on the back of this shape here just to tack it in place. I'm just going to eyeball that, just try and make it evenly extending over these sides of this square here and centered on that point going through the middle of the shape there. I've got my needle and I'm ready to go. And when I start stitching on this, I generally like to just start on the curve here, but that's just my personal preference. So go down into the fabric, just take a double stitch, come out pretty much on the same spot, right on the edge of that solid fabric, and off we go. So about 1/4 of an inch along from that, down into the background fabric, directly next to where we exited, and stitching along. Now you can see as we're approaching here that I've got some corners sticking out here. I'm just going to get my scissors and just trim that close to that point there, but not all the way off. I'm going to take my scissors, and you can use your needle to do this if you like, but I just find my scissors are a little bit easier for this. And I'm just going to press with my thumb and finger on top of that point and push those raw edges under, and then pinch that just to hold them there while I grab my needle and thread and just do those last couple of stitches up to that point. And then go back down into that point. Come out directly on that point, do a double stitch and just lock that into place. And that's the first point nicely tucked in. So I'm going to come out on the point here and continue along. Now I'm getting close to the first internal point here, and so I just want to double check that I've got all my raw edges tucked in here. I'm just going to take my scissors and just give that a bit of an extra poke there, and I'm pinching that with my thumb and finger just to hold that all where I want it. And then I'm going to come out exactly on that point, right down next to that point, in the very tip of that point, and do a stitch. And I'm going to do another stitch very close to that, just on the other side of that point, just tucking everything under, and just lock that internal point nice and neatly in there, like so. So then just continue along here until you get up to the next point. Now going back down through the background fabric there. I'm going to come out directly on that point again. I'm going to take my scissors tip and I'm going to poke all those raw edges underneath. Really give it a good push. You're the boss, you push it where you want it to go. Back down into my fabric, and then I'm not actually coming out 1/4 of an inch, I'm a little bit closer than that here, just because I want to make sure that those raw edges are not just going to accidentally poke out there. So just do another couple of stitches there, just a bit closer together, just to make sure everything's staying where you want it. And that's all it is to these pointy points. And last stitch, I'm going to go back down into that background fabric and tie off a knot. So if you'd like to know how I do this knot, I'm going to make a loop, pass the needle through the loop, and then pull that tight so that where that crosses over meets right on the fabric. You put your thumb on that and pull it tight. Then I'm just going to thread my needle with some green. So you're going to take a pair of leaves and just tack that into place. So you just take the pair of them and just eyeball that, want them meeting about 1/4 of an inch away from the point of the corner of the red square. So glue that one into place, and then take this one, just tack that one, and then just glue that so that those points are touching, and you can see that it's symmetrical with the leaf on the other side. You can push that into place. So I've made quite a bit of progress here. I've just gone around after I did the square and appliqued one of the lotus flowers, and I filled in evenly with the 2 leaves here. Then I went and appliqued the next lotus flower, filled in the leaves, the next lotus flower, filled in the leaves. So now we're up to filling in with the last lotus flower. So just go ahead and put some glue on the back of your shape here. Then we're just going to align this point with the corner of the square here. And then just eyeball this so that that diagonal line goes directly through the middle of the flower. And then just push that into place. And then you can just get going appliquing just like you did before. So coming up from underneath your fabric with your knot tied, you're going to go down into your background fabric, out along the very edge of your shape, and just work your way around. So just double check that you're going to be happy with the position the leaves are going to be in. So just lie them together like so. And just play around with the position. Are you happy with that? So just go ahead and give your work a good press, and if this is friction pen that you've been using, you can do the very satisfying part of removing the marker with your iron. Now you can go ahead and baste this to your batting fabric if you would like, or you can go straight ahead and add some of the hand stitching details, and that I'm going to add with some perlite thread. I think I'm going to use this nice peach colour.